John Kilburn from SAS. Welcome to MySecurityTV here at the World Police Summit in Dubai.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
John, former Queensland Police officer as well, so it's great to have you on. Maybe introduce us to SAS, your major conference partners here with the World Police Summit, and then we'll move into your role.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, at SAS we are the silver sponsors here for the event. It's a privilege to be here and be back in Dubai. So SAS as a company, we're an analytics company. We specialise in data analytics, AI, machine learning. And I think generally speaking, we refer to SAS as probably the most used analytics platform that you've never heard of. We're in fact the largest privately owned analytics company in the world. And we've been around for 49 years, so we hit 50 next year, the half century.
And obviously police are a major target for you and client base. Where are some of your deployments?
Yeah, so we're really growing inside the law enforcement space, and it's something that as a company we're really embracing and putting a lot of resources into. So we operate in Australia, all throughout Europe, Southeast Asia, the United States, Canada. We have different solutions in different jurisdictions. Attacking different problems depending upon each of those jurisdictions.
Yeah. So this is for case management and investigation management and the like?
Yeah, it is. So in some instances it is. So we do investigation management in Australia. We're very heavy in Australia with investigations management. So we have a solution based around the Australian government investigation standards that the Australian government put out. And it's basically a system and workflow that is designed to help investigators, but also provide real productivity dividends in how investigations are conducted. So the recording of an offence, then looking at how you plan an investigation, how you record those decisions that you make, statement taking, search warrants, all of those investigative instruments, and they all get integrated into the system, all recorded in the system. So there's no more saving things on desktops, having things on USB sticks. It all goes inside the system, and then when it's in the system, we then use our analytics engine to be able to help you derive intelligence from that. So you're able to use things like an equivalent of, say, CoPilot to be able to review things and give you advice. AI is a big thing. It's about, we're using AI machine learning to help investigators in a very controlled way given the ethical constraints around AI and law enforcement. But we use these tools to be able to try and make the life of frontline officers and seasoned investigators easier.
There's a lot of video being taken now by the front line. Is it analysing the video, moving into sort of textualising video?
Yeah, 100%. Surveillance and pattern of life is a really interesting thing that we're doing.
Keep going. We're at a police summit. So
yeah, it's going to happen all day.
Yes.
So computer vision is a big thing for us, and things like physical surveillance of a hard premises, if you look at the pattern of life, we're able to assist with taking basically the human out of that equation, the establishment of fixed cameras, covert cameras. One of the projects we've been working on recently is drone-mounted cameras running consistently around hard targets, and then the system is able to then detect vehicles, persons, generate surveillance logs around that. And so an investigator, as long as it's not obviously a high-risk target, it's more a pattern of life, an investigator can come in once a day, review that material, look at the running log, go back, review the footage. From that computer vision perspective, with that surveillance and pattern of life, what we're able to do is feed in a multitude of data sources. So, for example, if you've got cameras that are detecting vehicles, depending upon placement quality of cameras, automatically feeding in ANPR data. So you can feed in registration straight into ANPR, have that data come back, can match it. It just saves so much time. It's about streamlining what's being done. It can then be visually checked by a human. We don't want it all to be machine learning and AI making the decisions for you, but certainly helping you get to the point where decisions need to be made.
I suppose another one is feeding in other data sets. One trouble with law enforcement is they may well use
disparate data sources.
Correct,
100%, right? So this is, and this is probably where, when I came to SAS, this is the reason why I came, the value that we can put to it. So there are multiple questions around data. So data quality, data quantity. I refer to it often as the 3 V's, right? So the volume, the velocity, and the variety of data. And it was really interesting yesterday, someone was saying that up until around 2017, all of the data that had been generated up to the point of 2017, we now produce that on a daily basis, right? So the numbers are astronomical. Like, see what I did there? The interesting part about that is, and where we come into play, is that we provide a really high-end performing analytics engine that sits right in the middle, right? So we can take all of your data sources, your RMS, your CAD, your ANPR data, disparate data sources, Intel databases. We can take all of that data, feed it into a pipeline, into VIA, which is our analytics engine, and then what we do with that is that we're then able to cleanse it, good quality entity resolution where we compile 1,000 entities of 1,000 references to one person down into one, and then help you to be able to visualize that and then make connections with that. So the quality of the data that comes out once it's processed is of the highest nature, so that you can have some confidence if you want to make operational policing decisions based on that data.
Where is it heading in terms of that visualization? Are you moving into augmented reality, virtual reality kind of platforms, or is it still a 2D platform at this stage? And does it need to be developed further, or is there room for it?
Look, I think from an augmented reality perspective, I think it's... I just don't know how operationally practical it is for it to come to the workplace just yet.
Yep.
I think what we're talking about now is agencies are still coming to the terms with how do they manage AI, how do they deal with AI, what do they do with it. We're coming to agencies and saying you've got all this data now. If you put it through one pipeline, then you can put AI across all of your data, not just in these single silos, right? So it's done in the same way, and it can be then validated and accounted for court purposes. When you start to talk about augmented reality, it's more around that delivery system, It's about how that looks. We're finding the big thing is around mobility. So having that centralized data source and then having a really good mobile interface so that officers can still then do the work in the field that they need to do, cut down on the time, but it all goes back into the same system. And there needs to be flexibility, right? So you need to be able to operate in an environment where you are cloud-based, because that's where everyone is now moving to. And law enforcement has slowly been getting there. There's been traditionally been a reluctance for law enforcement to move to cloud, but now we're starting to see cloud-first policies appear. There's greater confidence in the level of cybersecurity that's starting to evolve around those cloud environments. But from my perspective, we're cloud agnostic.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, I was going to say law enforcement and government tend to have their own private
right.
clouds.
So we can run on your major vendors there, so your Azure's, your AWS's, your Google's, but we can also operate on a Gov cloud. But we can also still operate on TIN, on premises. So, and I think as a vendor, you need to be able to provide that flexibility. Different taskings within different agencies, you start to move into that counter-terrorism environment, which is my background. Things are going to be more scrutinised as far as security goes, and they are things that you may want to keep on
the other
premises.
aspect, you mentioned to the front line, but there's always a different audience or the stakeholder who needs that data and the timeliness of that data. I suppose my thinking on the visualisation is by the time it gets to court, you start to want to be able to visualise that from a jury's perspective or a coronial inquest perspective, as well as making
as
sure
to
that
how
there's
it looks.
live. Yeah, correct. There's an interesting inquest in the moment in Australia where there was a lot of visual aspects in terms of the shooting, but again, feeding all of that data in rather than wasting time. The other one is making sure that frontline officers are getting real-time data is another key aspect, right?
All right, so historically for me, as my background as a detective, is that an offence would happen, whether it be, say, an armed robbery or a homicide or a fraud offence. Police are very good at that response. We respond to it, and usually, in many instances, we're able to identify who an offender is, we're able to identify why an offence has been committed, and then we're able to, in our minds, say we satisfy the elements of an offence for prosecution, and we would arrest someone and commence the court proceedings. Once you commence that court proceedings, you've already taken that step to take action, but now you've got to put together a brief of evidence for the court. From our perspective, what we've managed to do with the investigation management system is, as an investigation occurs, we build the brief of evidence along the way. So at the end of the day, you don't have to go back and do it. It's a matter of everything is done for you, it's done in the system, and you can get to the end and push brief of evidence, and it will give you a brief of evidence for court, but more importantly, it'll also give you a disclosure brief. So a brief of every decision that's been made inside an investigation that can then be handed to defence, which is a requirement under, in this particular instance, Australian law. Same in the US, you've got to be able to disclose these things. So It's about how you use technology in a practical sense to make the life of frontline police better.
Yep.
But it's not just frontline police. I mean, we deal with data, right? And the faster we can crunch the data, it's almost real time for us, right? There's a batching and crunch time, but it's almost real time now. And when you start to talk about big volumes of data, the better your engine, the faster you can crunch it, the faster you can get those results. But being able to give operational commanders views of their policing divisions or their districts or their regions.
Yeah.
What do their crime statistics look like? What's being reported and when? And are they on track to meet their crime targets set by their senior executive? And senior executives should be able to walk in the morning and say, what occurred last night? How many domestic violence incidents? How many homicides? Where did they occur? Who's responsible for them? And be able to draw that down very, very quickly.
Well, I was going to say, and then at a national level, you can start to see that and what the key trends are, not just locally or within a police district, but you can start to capture that.
From an Australian perspective,
I can't help but thinking bigger picture either.
Yeah, no, and it's really interesting, right? So, I was a state policeman, but then when I worked in the counter-terrorism environment, I was working inside that national realm, right? So, national-based legislation, the Commonwealth legislation. The interesting part around that for me was I was able to see that, and you've seen it recently, right? Particularly in the media in Australia, you have instances where there are calls for national domestic violence registers. There are calls for national weapons registers after the shooting of Queensland police officers. It's that, and being able to pull that data in to provide a national register is obviously an area that's growing. There are some solutions that are currently being utilised. How effective they are, well, others can comment on that, but that's certainly the space in which we play. It's about data quality.
Potentially capability to do that. I suppose the last one is, we're obviously talking about policing, we're at a police summit, but what are the other applications in different domains?
From a SaaS perspective?
Yeah.
All right, so it's really interesting. Like SaaS's history, and it's a long and proud history, like 49 years as a private company is a long time, but our predominant customers are in banking, manufacturing, retail. And it's about, it doesn't necessarily matter what industry it is. So for banking, we look at fraud prevention, we look at increasing productivity, automation of taskings, things like that to increase productivity inside those organisations. Retail, it's about what product do you put out and when? When are people in your store? What are they spending at what periods of time? What are the demographics of your customers? Airlines. What aircraft do you have and when, at what gates, from what airports to transport what demand? Yep. And there are data sources out there that will give you that data, and when you have that data you can put it through an analytics engine. We build a model for you that increases your productivity. It's exactly the same inside the law enforcement realm, you just have to be able to speak law enforcement, and that's the only difference.
It's about what data is in and then what outputs you need, right?
So pulling the data in is very much similar across every agency, whether it's law enforcement or a bank or a retail chain. That's all very, very similar. Where the skill sets comes is the industry knowledge and the ability to work in partnership with a particular agency to understand what their key outputs are that are required, and then building a model for them that will work for them to give them the best result.
And you mentioned sort of the likes of CoPilot. You're putting agent AIs into the platform itself, and much like a ChatGPT interrogation. That is a very... so in some parts of our business, more broadly inside retail and banking, there's a greater acceptance around the more broader application of AI. Law enforcement, public safety, national security, there is more concern, or not concern, but more caution about how AI is applied to the data and to the decision maker, particularly when people have to get up in coroner's court or in criminal court to be able to give evidence about how and why they made particular decisions. They need to be able to rationale how those decisions are made. So we as a vendor make sure that any AI applications, whether it be automations, whether it be large language models, whether it be natural language processing, when any of those things are applied, we're able to support our customers by coming to the table to say, this is how we do this for you, and this is how you come up with that. Good. Well, look, it's all heading in the right direction. We've spoken to a number of former senior police officers here. The technology, this is a very technology-driven summit, but it is very impressive from the floor, and I think that from a policing perspective, hopefully, as you say, you're building more efficiencies into these platforms and ideally assisting the frontline officers.
Look, SAS has made an effort to really employ not just ex-police, but ex-police that are passionate about frontline. They're still passionate about the job. I often joke I still bleed blue, even though I've been out for sort of 5-6 years now. I still bleed blue. I still am passionate about making the life of frontline police better. And if I can do that and I can affect change, even though for police, even though I'm not in the job anymore, then my mission is a success, and that's what I look for.
Very good. I've been out for a long time, but again, here I sort of. I won't say bleed blue, but I have an injection of blue when I'm here over a few days. But it's great. John Kilburn, great to see you here in Dubai for the World Police Summit. Well done also on being a silver sponsor here as well. And thanks for joining us on MySecurityTV.
Thanks very much, Chris. I appreciate the time today.